The Night Watchman's hand shakes, shuddering the beam from his flashlight. He can't believe his eyes. Never in all his time on the job has he ever expected to see something like this. It can't be real. It all begins earlier that night. The newly hired watchman arrives at the site of his new position, guarding a Chuck E. Cheese after dark. It seems a bit excessive, even he thinks so. After all, it's just a restaurant with some arcade games and admittedly creepy animatronic entertainment. Why would it need a dedicated person to keep an eye on it overnight? Sitting down in the security office, he sips his coffee in front of the old TV monitors. Grainy footage from all the building's security cameras flickers on screen. He stares at the display, but doesn't really see it. The Night Watchman's eyes glaze over. He's already bored. In his boredom, his mind starts to wander. He thinks back to the wanted advertisement for this posting. It had mentioned several reports of movement late at night within the restaurant. None of it made much sense to him. Who'd want to break into a children's restaurant in the middle of the night? Probably just some teenagers, he thinks. Suddenly, a loud noise startles the Night Watchman. The sound of something metal clattering to the floor. It's coming from the kitchen. Someone's still here. He grabs his flashlight from his belt and rushes through the restaurant, leaving just before a shadowy figure passes one of the security cameras. The Night Watchman clicks on the flashlight and starts to search, the light from it casting creepy shadows as it falls over the various robotic animals. They give him chills just to look at them. He can't imagine that kids ever enjoy seeing the characters flap their mouths to weird, annoyingly catchy songs. Another noise, footsteps this time. He turns towards the back of the restaurant, the kitchen, where greasy, unhealthy junk food is prepared for hordes of screaming, rowdy children. Stepping out of the dark but brightly decorated main restaurant area into the kitchen, with all its stainless steel work surfaces, was like suddenly arriving on another planet. Instantly, his flashlight falls over what had caused the first sound. A trash can, toppled over to allow someone to rummage around inside. There's a trail of garbage, and the Night Watchman follows it. It leads him around the parts of the building reserved for employees, only to veer back out towards the restaurant. The more he follows, the closer he gets to the play area, a brightly colored foam pen, where overly energetic kids can run around freely, giving their parents a momentary break as they burn off all the sugar and calories from the low-quality food. But as he approaches the ball pit, he sees it. It's like an occult ritual, a circle of almost 20 children, hurling slices of half-eaten Chuck E. Cheese pizza into the ball pit. Not one of them notices him, too focused on their strange ritual to even register the light from the flashlight. The Night Watchman is about to call out, to demand to know what the heck is going on, how they all got in here, and where their parents are. But then, he sees something beneath the plastic balls. Something is stirring, moving in response to the children throwing pizza into the pit. And as it crawls out, the Night Watchman is met with the sight of something vile lurking in the ball pit. Stumbling upon what looks to be the secret meeting of a bizarre ball pit cult is hardly something that the average Night Watchman or security guard will ever have to experience. Even one working for an establishment like Chuck E. Cheese, the very worst they might find themselves dealing with is particularly rowdy customers, or the restaurant's animatronic characters getting a little quirky at nighttime. But thanks to the SCP Foundation's investigations into this particular branch of Chuck E. Cheese, they've uncovered exactly what it is about the building that draws such unusual attention. You see, there really is something lurking beneath the ball pit, something now known as SCP-6059. Here at the SCP Foundation, the securing of anomalies is one of the core tenets of the organization. After all, that's what the S in the name stands for. And as such, the Chuck E. Cheese containing SCP-6059 had to be requisitioned. Fortunately, the cover story of the restaurant shutting down after a major health code violation seems to have been a believable ruse. And after all, it's not too far from the truth. You could say that the place does have something of a pest problem. Now that it's no longer a restaurant and arcade, the site serves as a Foundation facility established specifically to research SCP-6059. Following some extensive analysis, researchers have determined what drew the cult-like group of children to the ball pit in the first place. It isn't an anomalous property of the building itself. There's nothing unique about this former Chuck E. Cheese franchise that causes such abnormal behavior. That all comes from the thing living in the ball pit. SCP-6059 is a particularly unusual creature, and not just to look at, although it's certainly not easy on the eye. In fact, it's been known to turn more than a few researchers' stomachs around the facility. Its amorphous body is around the size of an average human toddler, But if you were expecting it to resemble anything made of flesh and blood, then well, you might be disappointed and possibly put off your food. Structurally, the creature is comprised of a mixture of discarded and stomach-churning substances, primarily pizza sauce and plastic, along with various other waste materials. The plastic component is visible in the form of 2 of the plastic balls from the ball pit where it resides, placed on top of SCP-6059's blob-like head. Each one of those 2 plastic balls sports a hand-drawn pupil to resemble the creature's eyes, although no one is quite sure if SCP-6059 can actually see out of these or if they're more for show. Despite the strange and unnerving state it was found in, and being generally pretty unsettling to look at, SCP-6059 doesn't seem to be a violent anomaly. While not outwardly aggressive, it certainly doesn't reach the same levels of friendliness as other amorphous SCPs, such as the well-known and much-adored SCP-999, the Tickle Monster. But fortunately, especially for those researching it, SCP-6059 has come pre-contained for the SCP Foundation's convenience. What does that mean? Well, while it's not unheard of, not all anomalies come with their own containment cell. No, really, we aren't joking. SCP-6059 can't leave the ball pit. Despite the only thing separating it from freedom being a fence of thin, mesh netting and a pool of plastic balls that is only knee-deep, SCP-6059 is trapped. Although that hasn't stopped the creature from claiming it is fully capable of escape. That's right, SCP-6059 can speak too, and it has something of a high opinion of itself as well. Something that SCP Foundation researcher Dr. Zacharias Rosemary has discovered through extensive meetings with the beast of the ball pit. Dr. Rosemary is sent to the Chuck E. Cheese facility housing SCP-6059 at the behest of the Department of Anomalous Ambassadors. This is a specialized research division within the SCP Foundation that intends to improve the direct communication between personnel and anomalies themselves. And what branch would be better suited for learning just why SCP-6059 had its own following of devoted cultists when it was first discovered? Stepping inside the room containing the ball pit, Dr. Rosemary approaches the net barrier between him and the creature within. As per the instructions he has been given only moments before, Zacharias carefully opens the entrance, sealed with nothing more than a simple zipper. Dragging it down, he slips through and stands surrounded by plastic balls, reaching up to his knees. He calls out, knowing the anomaly can hear him, trying to get it to emerge and engage in a conversation with him. Sure enough, only a few meters away, the plastic balls of the pit shuffle and then part as SCP-6059 pops its amorphous head out from below. It greets Dr. Rosemary in an enthusiastic, almost accusatory way, demanding to know the answer to a strange question.
Thing in my pit, are you balls?
Of course, being a human being and not comprised of plastic balls, Dr. Rosemary has no choice but to answer the creature truthfully. But this doesn't go down well with SCP-6059. The creature immediately becomes highly agitated, shouting at the researcher to get out and leave. To emphasize its distress, SCP-6059 even starts gathering the plastic balls from around it and hurls them directly at Zacharias. If you've ever had a plastic ball from a ball pit thrown at you, then you know that it's hardly a pleasant experience. Although those balls are only lightweight, with enough force behind one, they can certainly pack a punch. Dr. Rosemary makes his hasty retreat from the barrage of plastic balls back beyond the safety of the net fence. Once he's out of range, the formless, messy face of SCP-6059 seems to frown before it disappears beneath the surface of the balls once again. Several other researchers and other personnel from around the site make their own attempts to converse with SCP-6059, met with the same reaction. It clearly doesn't feel like talking. But now that he knows the reaction wasn't unique to him, Dr. Rosemary is reassigned to try and get through to SCP-6059 again. This time, however, he's come prepared. Based on their brief encounter, the anomalous being seems to be childlike in its temperament and prone to misbehaving. So Zacharias has devised a plan for his next interviews. If SCP-6059 starts acting out again, then the researcher intends to treat it like he would a disobedient child, by putting the creature in a timeout. Heading back to the ball pit for a second attempt, Dr. Rosemary is also armed this time around. Well, with a family-sized Chuck E. Cheese pizza, at least. And it's not exactly a weapon, more of a peace offering to appease SCP-6059. Or a sacrifice. Passing through the mesh netting into the ball pit, Dr. Rosemary holds the box just above the surface. Almost immediately, SCP-6059 bursts out and chomps down on the pizza box, yanking the whole thing back down beneath the plastic balls to devour it. Zacharias tries to encourage it to talk again, and SCP-6059 makes no secret that it approves.
You have appeased me with a sacrifice. You may speak, non-ball.
Straight away, Dr. Rosemary wants to get down to business and asks the creature outright what it is, but the response is far from a coherent answer.
Tell me, mortal, have you ever had an enlightened experience in a pit?
Confused by what it means, the Foundation researcher tries to ask for clarity, but SCP-6059 has little to offer in that department. It seems obsessed with the contents of the ball pit, referring to the divine, higher power of the balls. Baffled and struggling to answer, Dr. Rosemary recounts an instance from his childhood where he got sick after playing in a similar pit in a McDonald's. This seems to be what the creature wanted to hear, judging by its response of,
Yes, this is it. You have been touched by my blessing. You are a prophet of the pit.
The anomaly apparently implies that it is some kind of deity, or at least it thinks that it is, capable of bestowing a divine blessing in the form of illness, which seems appropriate since SCP-6059 looks like it's riddled with germs. But Zacharias points out that the creature hasn't exactly answered his question. Hearing this, SCP-6059 seems a little confused, then pauses for a moment before hurling more balls at Dr. Rosemary and shouting again. He goes to leave the pit and warns SCP-6059 that if it doesn't behave itself, then he'll put it in a timeout. It responds by launching another ball and hitting the researcher right between the eyes. That settles it. The anomaly has earned itself a timeout. Putting his new plan into action, Dr. Rosemary shuts off the lights and leaves the room. SCP-6059 doesn't like it one bit, angrily throwing more balls at the mesh every few minutes, demanding that the lights be turned back on and that it be released from timeout. After a few short moments, it seems to settle and looks around in the dark for any sign of the researcher or any other members of personnel.
Please come back.
Now that he's shown the creature what the consequence is for bad behavior, Dr. Rosemary returns to the ball pit and sets out very clearly his expectations. It's very simple. As long as SCP-6059 behaves and cooperates, it'll receive pizza as a sacrifice. If not, should it decide to misbehave and act in a disruptive or disobedient way, then it will get put back in timeout. And surprisingly, the unruly anomaly agrees to adhere to these rules going forward. Their next interview begins much the same as the previous one, with Dr. Rosemary bringing another pizza for SCP-6059 to gobble up. He asks if the creature is ready to behave, to which it nods. Trying to be as amicable as possible, Dr. Rosemary explains that they got off on the wrong foot and that they're going to start over. He tells SCP-6059 to just answer his questions honestly, and the anomaly agrees to his terms. Then, the researcher asks again, wanting to know exactly what SCP-6059 is.
I am Baculi, god of the pit. I hold divine power over the pit and all within.
This hardly explains much, apart from confirming that SCP-6059 does think that it is some kind of god. Dr. Rosemary presses it for more information, and the creature responds by describing the pit and its many balls as its domain that SCP-6059 oversees. It implies that the ball pit can bestow blessings of some description, but the Foundation has confirmed that it's just an ordinary ball pit. Next, Zacharias decides to ask if Baculi, SCP-6059, is the god of all ball pits or just this one, and comments that the creature hasn't made much attempt to try and escape its confinement. SCP-6059 seems to take this personally, insisting that it is more than capable of leaving the pit due to being all-powerful. Dr. Rosemary challenges it to do just that, to which SCP-6059 responds by reaching for one of the plastic balls. He urges the creature to make smart choices. Putting the ball back, it confirms that its domain is just the one ball pit it currently resides in. Dr. Rosemary pushes for more information, although SCP-6059 is reluctant to give answers. It needs some gentle encouragement, shying away when asked why this specific ball pit. But eventually, Zacharias coaxes answers out of the creature. It says it just woke up there one day. It came into being within the filth and waste lurking at the bottom of its pit. Then, Dr. Rosemary asked about the children. You see, SCP-6059 is the reason the strange cult-like group had gathered in the ball pit. It has the ability to spread some kind of influence that makes anyone under the age of 10 start to worship it. This usually occurs after around 20 minutes of being near SCP-6059 and leads to those affected to form a circle around the creature while praising its might and power, as well as throwing slices of Chuck E. Cheese pizza into the ball pit as sacrifices to SCP-6059.
My divine servants, loyal subjects who sung my praises and brought me offerings. A god is nothing without followers. Followers spread word of your power and gain you influence. With followers, worshippers, you are remembered as mighty in the pantheon. With worshippers, you gain offerings, and you live forever.
When Dr. Rosemary asks why children, the anomaly describes feeling a kinship with them. It's not hard to see why, given the creature's tendency to misbehave and overestimation of its own importance. Seeing Zacharias taking notes, SCP-6059 asks if the doctor has become one of his supposed followers. After all, Dr. Rosemary has brought offerings of pizza and seems to be writing down stories about SCP-6059.
I do not feel my influence working upon you, yet you perform the steps of worship regardless. Have you accepted the glory of the balls? Have you decided to become a follower of mine?
Of course, Zacharias is just making notes of their interaction in the interest of research. He warns SCP-6059 not to overthink it before wrapping up the interview, once again leaving SCP-6059 alone in the ball pit. The security cameras observing the creature's chamber record it becoming irritable at being left alone. It throws more balls at the mesh for several hours in an attempt to get someone to pay it attention.
Come back.
Then, it sinks back beneath the plastic balls. The very next day, there is a significant difference in the following interaction between SCP-6059 and Dr. Rosemary. The creature actively requests to speak with the researcher. It wants to talk. Or maybe it wants the company, but can't quite articulate it. Agreeing to return to the ball pit as per SCP-6059's requests, although assuming the creature might just be wasting his time for attention, Dr. Rosemary is greeted with a confession. The anomaly explains it has been greatly bothered since their most recent meeting. SCP-6059 explains that previously it has been content with its domain, not wanting for anything other than the pit and the balls within. It was content, and it managed to garner a small cult of worshipping followers, but now it feels as if something is wrong. SCP-6059 continues, describing the time when it first awoke in the pit. Back then, SCP-6059 has a feeling, a need for something, but it doesn't know what, and there is nothing it can do to stop this strange, unfamiliar feeling. All the newly congealed amorphous creature knows is that it is a divine deity. Around it is the ball pit, its domain. Eventually, the anomaly meets the children, and thanks to its influence, they begin to worship it, and it's their kindness and sacrifices that make SCP-6059 feel important. But once its followers are gone, and SCP-6059 is found by the Foundation, that same negative feeling returns, until it meets Dr. Rosemary. As the creature continues to explain, it describes how upset it feels to be left alone in the pit, and that speaking with Zacharias can alleviate that feeling. Then, when the researcher leaves, the feeling comes back. It confuses and upsets a bewildered SCP-6059, but offers some words of comfort and even another pizza. Dr. Rosemary explains that it's his job to take care of SCP-6059 and ensure the creature is okay. The anomalous blob rightly points out that he didn't have to come this time. After all, he could have ignored SCP-6059's request to talk. It wasn't required by the Foundation that Dr. Rosemary conduct an interview today. Zacharias puts it in simple terms that SCP-6059 can understand. He agreed to talk not because he has to, but to ensure the creature is all right and to learn more about it, but mostly because he understands SCP-6059 just needs a friend. To begin, SCP-6059 is unfamiliar with the concept. It's never had a friend before, only those that worship it because of its anomalous influence. Over time, the creature seems to have developed a sense of self-superiority because of this, believing itself to be a god. But Dr. Rosemary explains that a friend cares about someone not out of a need to worship them, but instead out of respect. Friends offer support or food or gifts to a friend in need, not out of obligation, but because it is the right thing to do. Zacharias tells SCP-6059 that friends listen to and care about each other not because they have to, but because they can.
Are you my friend, Doctor?
Naturally, Dr. Rosemary agrees, as long as that is something that SCP-6059 wants. In response, the creature playfully throws a plastic ball between the doctor's eyes. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-387, Living Lego.